somewhat active HOA. However, I have contributed for a number of years in annual dues, but it does not appear, nor am I accusing certain neighbors for not paying their dues, but our roads really need to be repaired. After participating in the citizen survey, I feel at a loss of what to do with our road condition. If the city can't contribute public funds, even though I pay my taxes and HOA dues to improve my roads, I know that Sonoma Verde is in a public improvement district. What can you do to help me and my neighbors to have road improvements with an established neighborhood? Would the city support another public improvement district? It's a lot. It's good. It's a good question.
So there are two active councilmen sitting here to my left and right, and council folks, and they can probably address that. I'll just say that people moving out to a small town like this, especially moving into a very nice home that they've paid a lot of money for, and it's a dream spot to be, and they normally have, they naturally have an expectation that most of this stuff will just be taken care of. That when stuff breaks down, the city will fix it, and people expect that there'll be police patrols in their neighborhoods or whatever it might be, and that might not be true out here right now at this point in time. The city has a ways to go to develop the kind of infrastructure that can make those things happen. Right now, the city doesn't have the ability to accommodate this particular question. I will let council people address that.
Yeah.
After our last council meeting, I spoke with the city administrator because she had met with some residents to discuss this very issue, her and the mayor and Councilman Larkin. It was discussed about doing a PID. The one thing that she said is a requirement, you have to have 51% of your members of your HOA vote to approve it before it can even be really discussed. If you can't get that hurdle cleared, there's nothing else that's going to happen. I want anybody that's considering a PID to research it very thoroughly, because while they're better than a mud district, they do encumber you, and I'm not going to give legal advice. It's just something that you need to research if you're going to do it.
Okay, so on the website, we gave. Okay, so I think. Go ahead.
Before you read off another question,
sure.
I would just say that I'm here to answer any questions that pop up. If you got anything you'd like to type in, you want to get to know the candidates better, ask anything you like. I mean, there's nothing that's off limits. If it's terrible, a horribly personal question that can't be answered, then it can't be answered. But to get to know the candidates, feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this is a question, comment to all of us. Thank you for being accessible and open to the constituents of McLendon-Chisholm. It's apparent you strive for transparency, not just during election cycle. Councilmember Balkum, Councilmember Turnbull, and Candidate Day. It's a mystery to me why some folks allow themselves to be led around by indirect information rather than go straight to the source. My questions to you are, what are the avenues of investigating McLendon-Chisholm City facts, historical documentation, and current news open to all citizens now that much has been put online? Okay, well, there's about 4 parts to this question. Let's just take it one at a time. Okay, so I'll take this if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
To go straight to the source, yes. It would be great that people will actually talk to their elected officials, city administrator, city secretary, the mayor. I mean, try to contact them directly, because when you have a whole bunch of people talking about different things, yeah, there could be misinformation and not understanding what the concern is or what the issues are. And so it's really good to actually talk to the actual people that are making these types of decisions and maybe explaining why that decision was made. And the information that you can actually get it from the website. There's a lot of documents that are on there, and if you ever want more information, there's also available to do an open records request, and that can be done through the city administrator, and that's the person you would contact for that. The other part of that question was, as far as current news open to all citizens, not well. I'm only the person that's sending out e-blasts at this time. I try to, keep up with what the current, if there's like events that we want to share that's city related, any type of things that we're in the process of doing, like such as the citizen survey. I try to keep people informed about that, and this is the current agenda items that we're working on, and so that's kind of where some information that's being propagated out. Did you want to say anything about that?
I just open records request. Anybody can go to City Hall anytime and fill out a form and ask for any information they want. And if you can, if it's available, it'll be given to you.
Which of course has since ended. But with the iCompass, the newer stuff will be there. I do know that Lisa has what they refer to as minute books in the office of historical that's not on the current website. So it's available. Now there are some restrictions, of course. Anything that's subject to attorney-client privilege will not be dispensed. But for the most part, you can get just about anything that you want.
I'm a candidate, so I don't have to be as tactful as either council person does. As a candidate, I will tell you that I think you should do all the research you possibly can. If you think something awful happened in the city in 2014 that the city council approved, then go back and look and see who was on the city council then and who voted how and why they vote that way, in your opinion. There are very simple tells that you can look for. I've noticed that my opponent's signs, for instance, are on the property of large developers. And that developer supports that candidate. And the question to me as a voter is, does that candidate support that developer? Because as we go forward, developers have not been our greatest friends in this town so far. And I will just be blunt about it. And that a densely populated subdivision is certainly not the future I see for this city. And made certain comprehensive plans, to make themselves rich. We really can't afford to let that go forward. And I don't think our current plan is either comprehensive or much of a plan. There is a pretty good one that is being floated. And I'd like to see that one go forward. So my soapbox, I'm off.
Mm-hmm. And just one thing to remind you guys about is that we have city council minutes, and that is available also on the website. And I want you guys to notice the difference between, by the way, just a correction on Mayor Pro Tem Turnbull, we launched the website in 2017, not 2016, but we were in the process in 2016. So in 2017, if you notice the types of minutes, how detailed, how much more information there is, because I'm a detailed kind of gal, so I would like to know a little bit more of my history, and it's very, very helpful knowing a little bit more of the dialogue, things that was discussed at these council meetings. So when you look back at the city council minutes in the past, there's very little content. It goes straight to the point where it was approved or not approved, and it does list the people who approved certain things, but there is a little bit of...
The big jump is between 2016 and 17, and nobody sitting here was on the council at that time. But I can tell you where the difference is between 2016 and 17. There was basically $105,000 in public safety increase. There was about $58,000 in legal and professional increase. Salaries went up about $24,000 roughly. But the big difference, well, actually, it's the biggest difference. Permit revenue expectation went up from $100,000 in 2016 to $359,000 in 2017. The correlating expense of doing the inspection with our vendor at that time went from 50,000 to 191,000. So that's roughly 140,000. You've got 105,000 in fire. You've got increase in salaries and increase in legal fees. The thing that needs to be remembered is budgets are guidelines. You're predicting what you're going to do 12 months later. That's pretty hard to do. If somebody that's can do it down to the penny, you shouldn't be living in McLendon-Chisholm. You should be on Wall Street making a lot of money, because if you're that good at predicting, that's where you could do it. What really is important is how close to the budget the cities operate. And I requested actual data from the city administrator so I could give that to you. She was not able to get it all to me, so at our next video I'll present that, and as soon as I get it, I'll put it up on my.
As far as like having like a workshop on that, these types of things don't take like one night often. This is like a over course of time. I do believe that whenever the city council is creating the survey, it needs to be the city council mainly doing it, because these are the things that they are working on. Maybe it's a project they're working on. Maybe it's a project that is needing to help deliberate in the future city council agenda. And so those are types of questions that really need to be produced by the city council. Now, we did have in, I think it was last year, the second citizen survey, we did have another person who was asking in regard to open spaces, and so their question literally was in there in the survey, and so that was good. So I'm not against like people contributing questions from the citizen standpoint, but as far as like having the workshop on that, I guess we can kind of talk about that. Maybe we can decide about how to go about that, because we actually started it was approved in September 11th, 2018, and then we started doing the actual production work in November 2018, and we literally just finished it on March 12th, or no, March 11th is whenever we finished going line by line with the city council. So.
Committees make everything go slower, there's no question. I have a slightly different take on it than Adrienne does, which is that I would like to see, if there's going to be an annual citizen survey or every couple of years, however that's going to be done, I would really like to see citizens send as many questions as they possibly would want. I mean, I would like to hear from everyone what they think is important. You have to remember, when you put these kind of things together, if you brainstorm them, you may put 50 questions down and use 2. This is true of professional panels that put these together. I've built some surveys in the past. I'll also acknowledge that many organizations build their surveys to fit their wants or their needs, and so that's something that I think people would be naturally skeptical of, and the way to appease that or relieve that skepticism would be to allow folks to write as many questions into city council as they could. I think you ought to have a set period for that, have a format for it, and then and just accept and then go through the questions, and then let council members or the committee, however it's designed, pick the best ones. You can't publish everything, obviously, from a cost perspective.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to say anything?
Yep. I think you guys covered it.
All right. Okay, so...
But City Hall, until City Hall was built, there was no debt portion of the tax rate. So your tax rate went up from 9 to 15.9 the first year, because they put you in debt. So if we ever get that down, and assuming that we don't build something else, theoretically you could be back down to 9-cent property tax. Now, I don't see that happening, because everybody's wanting more and more services. So I think the M&O portion of the budget probably will go up at some point in the future. But I can tell you that I will do my part to make sure that your tax rate doesn't go up. Mm-hmm. There is one thing that I want to address, and it may be coming up in a upcoming question, but there's a little fallacy out there that's saying that we didn't raise the tax rate, but because we didn't lower it, we effectively raised everybody's taxes. Well, that's just flat not true. Yeah. We don't control what CAD appraises your house at. So if you last year had a $400,000 house and CAD came out and said that you have a $500,000 house, we would have had to have knocked 2 or 3 cents off the tax rate for you not to pay more. That's a rough estimate. I haven't actually done the calculations. Same thing. We could have lowered, or if they lower your appraisal, you're going to pay less taxes. If it stays the same, you're going to pay the same taxes. If they raise it, you're going to pay more. And that's provided that the council doesn't change your total tax rate, which we have not in the last 2 years. Worksheet that shows how you calculate all of this. If you have insomnia, I recommend you do so because it will put you to sleep.
Yeah.
But it's just not true that we raised more tax money this year than we did last year on the same property.
So I've gone out and talked to residents here and there, and taxes are one of those things that I think get used as scare tactics. Like taxes come up. From a city perspective, I think we have the lowest tax rate around of all the surrounding cities. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure we have the lowest city tax rate. I think people confuse their county taxes with their city taxes, and that's understandable. But really do the research and see the difference. So we can't. The city can't affect what the county does. To that end, I've also heard people say, well, what are you going to do to lessen our taxes? Maybe a more commercial development. I've heard people say things like, well, this city won't approve anything. They turn down stuff. I hear rumblings, and I think it's really important to point out a couple of very, 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 very key facts. First off, the city doesn't have a good commercial zone plan yet. That is one of the things that needs to be done very, very quickly with a 5-lane highway running through. There have been things that have come before the city. They haven't really made it to city council, but they've come to city planners or lawyers where someone wants to put in a Dollar General. If you think a Dollar General is good for this town, I am probably not the guy to vote for. And I don't mean to seem elitist, but we've got a pretty special town here, and the Dollar General is not going to help it. And I won't even tell you how strongly I feel about that. And to that end, if you start thinking that we don't yet have a good commercial zoning plan, let me explain what would happen to this town if we got a Dollar General.
However it's done. Can you give some background as to why these might be necessary?
Sure. Research small or mid-sized California towns where entire councils walked off with an awful lot of money. There was a couple of these a few years back that were pretty serious. But mostly it is to prevent underhanded dealings, backroom deals, good old boy deals that essentially line someone's pockets at the expense of the city or the city's direction, development, or growth. Now, it turns out, I did not know this, McLendon-Chisholm, I've since learned this, does have an ethics ordinance. And ethics ordinances can be written in various ways, and so this one I've got to become familiar with. I think this was put in before Mayor Short, and so that would have been Mayor Steinhagen that got this ethics ordinance on the books, and that would probably be in direct result, I'm guessing, from the City Hall debacle, which is where an ethics ordinance would have come in really handy but didn't exist. So there's an example.
Okay, the next one is council members Balkum and Turnbull. You stood your ground and took an ungodly amount of abuse after a city vendor contract increase, reassessment, and requests for accounting documentation became a source for heated contention. How did you do it? Why did you not give up and give in?
I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, the city council's job is, it can be very, we can have some heated discussions, okay? There's no doubt about that. I personally believe to stand up for what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And I personally did not like the tactics that were going on, whether it's on social media or through newspaper, to try to pressure city councils to basically be persuaded to vote a certain way so that the heat wouldn't be on you. And I've had a lot of heat personally myself on just personal attacks and things of that nature, and I'm still standing, and I'm going to continue this right now, is to learn from it and how to move forward, and to make sure that through that learning experience, we know what things to look for.
Well, I'm going to be a little shorter. The reason I'm still standing, why I stuck to my guns, is because I believed what I was doing was what was best for the city. And that's how I voted on everything. I haven't voted to get reelected. I haven't voted to please those who fund campaigns. My campaign, I'm the only one who has funded it, so I don't have anybody to answer to except for all the citizens who voted for me. And if you like what I've done, then I would appreciate your vote again. If you think that I was wrong, you have to make up your mind if my opponent is a better choice than I am. That's the way the system works. But at no time have I ever cast a vote thinking this will get me reelected.
To me, both of these candidates and both of these city councilmen to my left and right, both of them, they represent what I believe should be the newer face of the city. I say that because they're not tied to, attached, or influenced by, that I can tell, any of the old guard. And it is in fact the old guard that I'm essentially running against. I am going to say again that I think that you should ask yourself, ask your candidate, who do they support? And the only answer really should be where this city is going. For the greatest number of people who moved out here for the goal of living in a small town, or a small town feel, or an open spaces town, or a town that wasn't too terribly crowded or wasn't too commercial. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to go to the next question.
Sure.
Okay, so Councilmember Balkum, Councilmember Turnbull, and candidate Day, I heard some outspoken individuals say the council effectively raised taxes, or even though the rate was unchanged due to inherent factors, say they're,
has the power to control the flow of the meeting.
There are, let's be clear, there are state rules, right, on public meetings. So on a public meeting, there are state rules about what can be talked about and cannot be talked about. And that has to be on the agenda. It has to be on the published agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
You can claim an item's going to be on an agenda, and then if it's not published for that evening's agenda, then it cannot be discussed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you have any issues trying to get something on the agenda, I'm available. And I believe Mayor Pro Tem Turnbull is also available to, help you get an item on the next City Council agenda, and then we can send it off to the City Administrator within the time. And also, it doesn't require like 2 council members. I mean, I have sent in items, and I've had them put on the agenda within that time frame of being in on Thursday at 10 o'clock. So, okay, next question.
To further answer that question, does a motion need to be made by a council member to put an item on the next week's agenda, or the next meeting's agenda.
Not a motion, it's just more
Well-
like we have to send it through email.
Okay.
Not, that's
Oh.
not exactly true. If we're doing it at a meeting,
Oh, well, at a meeting, yeah.
then we can tell
Right.
the city administrator that we want this item placed on the next meeting agenda.
So I bring this up because I encourage citizens to come to the meetings. Don't let a handful of negative people keep you away. I mean, I know in this town there has been a lot of social media, which could not be more antisocial and more antithetical to sunlight. But shine as much light as you can on whatever issues they are that are concerning you. And if you bring something up at a meeting in your speaking time, you can get on the docket to speak, and you've got 3 minutes. And if you bring up something that one of the council members feels like ought to be put on the agenda, they can right then make the motion to put it on the next week's agenda. That's why I say this.
Okay. Well, the next one was,
Next meeting's agenda. I'm sorry, not next week's.
the following question was, do you support requiring a minimum of 2 council members to present to the mayor an agenda item?
And I'll address that first.
Okay, go ahead.
No. And the reason is very simple. If you,
Member is an elected official, should be representing everybody, and that individual or that council member should be allowed to present any items that should be that they want on the agenda. I mean, there should be no question. I mean, we're the legislators.
Any attempt to limit agenda items is an attempt to silence the citizens, period.
Next question. Oh wait, let me check one more place real quick.
You know, get your friends to vote. I mean, get more people involved in voting. I mean, this is the problem. For many, many, many years here, such a small number of people have voted that there are still good old boy forces at work that think that if they can just manipulate a handful of people with a lot of negative information, they can still control the direction of the town. And I'm just here to say that time is past. Mm-hmm. Like Scott, you know, I don't have anything to gain from this. I don't need anybody's help in doing it. I'm doing it for the city. I'm doing it for my 3-year-old. Doing it for my property values and your property values. You know, I'm not going to try to turn my 8 acres into a bunch of condominiums or anything stupid like that. Here to keep this town, keep the open spaces that we have, to keep it friendly, to keep it small, and to keep it real, and to not become one of the many towns around us. You know, pick one. None of them. So, anyway.
So last year in the Rockwell Herald Banner, there was a story that the current city council is under investigation. Was this a planted story, just like the postcards that was mailed? I agree with what David said at your last virtual meeting about not trusting the media. Thank you for being candid. Okay. Yeah, so this subject has continuously been brought up in various forums, and yes, it's true, there was a filing that was, a complaint was filed. However, based to my knowledge, there was no open records request requested by any law enforcement agencies with the city administrator. You know, none to my knowledge has any of the previous council have ever been interviewed by any law enforcement agencies. There, to my knowledge, as far as anything moving forward on that, there's, you know, I mean, it's just
Can be believed, but remember, you know, they're going to get those stories. You can make a story the moment something is filed. That doesn't make it true. Follow the investigation. Don't follow the lead, the initial lead.
okay. So one thing I will add to that is that you as a citizen, you can pick up the phone and you can call the Rockwell County Sheriff's Office and ask them about it and see what they say. So I challenge any citizen that you probably should do that. You should probably ask them about it and see what they say to you, because I know that for a fact I've had this past week, I can tell you just from one message I received, it said, I called the Sheriff's Office last Wednesday and there was a detective that spoke with them and said, yes, a complaint was filed over a year ago and the office has to investigate every complaint that is made. The complaint is still open due to technical issues. I was concerned because this person was saying that they were seeing messages constantly on social media. And so there seems to be a lot of misinformation about it. And so the detective that they were speaking with, replied back and said that it seems like you are an intelligent individual, and I bet you can figure it out.
Okay. She just stole my tagline.
Use your brain, right?
Right. I have not been contacted by any law enforcement agency. I've not had any records, documents, or anything else requested. So if there's an investigation, I have no firsthand knowledge of it. I have what Adrienne just said. I've heard what's in the paper. What she stole from me that I was going to say was, you need to contact the law enforcement agencies and ask them if the rumors you're hearing are correct, and find out what they'll tell you, because they haven't told me anything.
Mm-hmm.
There are large tracts of land that a handful of landowners would like to sell for a lot of money, and they're planning on doing that in the next 5 or so years as this highway gets built. And for that reason alone, you are going to see all kinds of negative, fake, and I hate using the word fake, you're going to see negative, misleading information because people have their vested interest to protect. Mm-hmm. So just use your brain. Okay,
so, there it goes. Do you plan to defund MCFR like you did with MCVFD and contract solely with the MCVFD? The merger is more than doubled while payroll...
Under the SAFER grant to have 6, well, actually the easiest way to say it is we're required to have 2 people at the station 24/7, 365. Now that equates out to 6 full-time employees. We can have 12 part-time employees, we can have 3 full-time and the rest part-time. It can be any combination, but the bottom line comes down to you have protection there. 2 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And those people are now getting benefits, which they didn't get with MCVFD. You have double the coverage, actually a little bit better than double the coverage, and with paid personnel who are there. Now, while it was all going on, the debate over whether to integrate or not, that was one of the things people said, well, why would you consider going back to all volunteer? We have to have people there. Well, you got them now, and now people are saying, are you going to get rid of them? No, we're not going to get rid of them. As for the fire chief is not included in the SAFER grant. He is a city employee. He existed before he was not qualified to be paid under the grant. He had to be excluded. One of the things that I'm going to share a little information that isn't really in this question. The SAFER grant doesn't just pay salaries. The SAFER grant can be used for benefits and other expenses that go along with the salary. Now, as far as the kickback, neither one of us touched anything to do with that grant other than voting in council to accept it. So I don't know how we would receive a kickback.
So the only kickback, to use the word, first off, define kickback. So people have probably learned or heard that certainly Freedom of Information requests have turned up that in the old question of salary growing over time, well, as the city expands, salaries would grow if the personnel required to be on staff were to grow. And that is revisited annually?
Well, the grant starts out with FEMA paying a majority of the labor cost. and it's a 3-year grant. The last year, we actually pay a majority, and then after that, it's all on us.
It's like
So
a
that's where that question's coming from is that at the end of the grant, we're going to be carrying the whole bill
Got it.
for those 6 people. Now, if the citizens are happy and they think that it's a good expenditure of money, I'm sure they'll let us know that they'll be happy to continue that. If the citizens say, no, we don't need this, I don't see where we're getting it, why would I want to pay that type of salary? Could we at that point, or could the council at that point reduce the number of people? Yes, because we're no longer under the FEMA contract.
Got it.
At that point, it's up to us, to the city council, whoever that is at that time, and the citizens they serve.
Okay, so, it was when I was doing my research, there's like questions that came up in a webinar. It was called Asking Fire Chiefs the Right Questions, and so through that, I want to make sure that whenever we're reviewing the budget with the fire chief, I mean, he constantly is supposed to be doing reports, and so he needs to be reviewing the budget and making sure he's meeting our expectations. And he understands that there is certain requirements and there is certain duties that's required to make sure that you are reviewing the reports as far as like statistics and understanding the need to be able to have certain personnel working on certain times, and so all of that stuff will be reviewed, and so we need to make sure that we're taking the time and asking certain hard questions with the fire chief. And just like with any contractor or any person that's employed, there's things that they have to meet as far as like certain requirements and expectations. So it's going to be continuously measured as far as like what kind of statistics as far as like the actual incidents that are occurring, so that we're making sure that we are meeting and staying.
So there's a lot to be done over the next couple of years. You'd be amazed how many of your neighbors have no idea that TxDOT has already approved and will be building a 5-lane highway through here. And if you don't think that's going to change the city's future, man, I'm telling you, we have got to get prepared for it. And we are starting that already. The Economic Development Council will be meeting, with some folks around the various cities to look at some ideas and to get some idea of what's going to our south or to our north. Borders on 205, what kind of planning is already made for that, if any. And also we'll be talking to other towns that have done well in trying to maintain their small town charm and maintain their open spaces, especially in light of having a 5-lane highway come through the middle of it.
And to touch on that, as far as what's going on north and south, any of you who are on next door, you saw the announcement that Rockwall's putting in, or there's been a zoning change request for property at 549 and 550 for a high-density development. So you already have Somerset at the other 549 and 550, or at 549 and 205. Now at the south 205 and 549, they're trying to zone that to put in another high development or high density development. So as the people there were talking about, think about all these cars that are going to get dumped out on this highway. Even if it's built to a 4-lane or 6-lane eventually, it's not just us dumping the cars onto it. It's people to the south in Terrell, Forney, and north in Rockwall. So the days of a peaceful country drive down 205 are long gone.
Okay, does the city council prevent building permits? What is the process of adding additional structures or updating my property, whether it is the roof or a barn?
I'll handle that. We do not prevent building permits if you meet the standards, and the inspector, in the case of repair, says that your permit request satisfies the needs, you'll get the permit. If he has a reason why your permit is not going to meet the requirements, he'll let you know and you'll have to redo that. As far as adding a structure, you have to go in front of P&Z to get that not answered, an email from any citizen, and I'll continue answering anybody that reaches out to me. As far as having that available, yes, I supported it. I supported it when Adrienne and I started working on the website. We were trying to do everything we could to give citizens every opportunity that we could think of to use technology, to contact us, to get information. That's the reason we did the live cast of the meetings for the first year we were there. That's the reason that there's more data on the website now than there was before. We have worked to get the iCompass put in. We're in favor of that. We voted for it. So everything that we can do to get make it easier for the citizens to contact us, ask questions, I'm all for it.
And before Adrienne finishes her answer, or has her answer on this question, let me add to this, that I communicate with some 2,400 retail insurance agents weekly. And I do that through email. I wouldn't say email blast, but I do it through marketing pieces of various sorts. And a lot of it is through email. It's something I'm very comfortable with. And I just think that the continual flow of information is just extremely important. And so to answer part of that question, I think the question was, why is it just Adrienne? And the obvious thing to me is that no one else up there can do it. When I look at who's sitting in the council seats, I just don't see anybody else that has that proficiency. At least I've not seen that demonstrated yet. So I assume that's why she's the one doing it.
Well, the first part of the question was, did I offer the council to contribute to the citizen survey? Yes. Since September 11th, the new survey, yes, I absolutely did. I pleaded multiple times to contribute questions to the survey. As far as e-blast, Facebook, if there was like in the past, actually, I've had previous council wanting a public statement shared on there. Yes, I did that. I shared that information. Same thing on the website. I included documents as well that they wanted specific documents to be posted on the website. I did that. As far as like the technology that we on the website, one of the things that we were trying to do is to help out people to be a free way to do it.
So one of the questions was, how much does it cost? You're saying it doesn't cost anything.
No.
Okay.
It costs $0.
Doesn't cost anything.
So I mean, it costs my time to do it.
Sure.
So let's see, what was the other part about? Well, thank you for supporting that you guys would want to do broadcasting. I really appreciate hearing that. So, okay.
Let's move on to the highway question.
Oh, the highway question. How many lanes are being installed on Highway 205, and when will it be? If Councilmember Herron is not seeking for another term, who will be the new TxDOT rep from our city council, and how is that decided?
Okay. How many lanes, when it'll be, that is a fluid TxDOT answer. What they're saying today is it'll be 4 lanes with dedicated turn lanes at the various intersections. It is projected to be a 6-lane when it is fully built out. As for who will replace Councilmember Herron, we all volunteered for certain jobs. It'll be whoever volunteered. I don't know if there's 2 people that want to do it. I mean, probably send both of them. These representative positions are basically just volunteer. We agree to do it. Excuse me. So there is no dedicated process for naming who goes to what event.
I would just say I fight with regulatory committees on a regular basis. I fought with the regulatory committee this morning in the insurance space, and so I already deal with the Texas Department of Insurance and another regulatory body. I'm familiar with having to do that. It's not a lot of fun, but on the other hand, since I was very young, I've always enjoyed the chance to fight authority, as John Mellencamp once said. But hold on. The point is, we're not going to fight TxDOT. I'm just kidding. We're not going to fight TxDOT. I mean, we're going to work with them, obviously. But it is 6 lanes. That is the room that they're making.
That's the total. Yes.
And we got to wrap it up.
Yes. Okay. So we just thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we appreciate you tuning in. And thank you for the questions. I hope that we were able to address